Diagwit, we're here today with Daniel Robson, the executive producer of games media IGN Japan. He's originally from the UK, came here in 2006, and since then he's been covering pop culture, everything from films, music, games, on the ground here, and connecting Japan to the wider world. So we're going to ask him today about the future of games media and the future of cultural storytelling. So,
cool. You made all that sound very simple. I have such a complex, complicated backstory.
I try. Yeah. So, first off, what was it that first brought you from the UK to Japan, and what was the sort of turning point that, you know, changed your career from like music, the transition from music journalism to games media?
Sure. Well, so I've been here 20 years. I came in May 2006, so exactly 20 years. And I was already a music journalist in the UK. So I was working for various publications back in the UK and then writing about all kinds of music, but somehow I ended up specializing in music from Japan. And so I moved to Japan to do that, to interview bands and see live shows and that kind of thing. That's the kind of main reason I first came.
Right.
And I was doing that for a very long time, sort of specializing in mainly music content as a writer and then also as an editor for about 15 years all in. And then, but you know, over time being in Japan, games is such a big part of like daily life here and such a big part of pop culture. And I did cover games a little tiny bit before I came to Japan back in the UK. And so it just started becoming more and more of a part of my sort of the mix of my work. And you know, when you're writing about Japanese music for overseas publications, there's a limited number of people who are interested in that. But games, there's tons, you know, it's everywhere. And it's a big part of the culture here, and it's a big part of the culture in the rest of the world. And Japanese games are very dominant globally in the game industry. So there was just tons of interesting stuff to cover. So I sort of slid sort of gradually more towards games over time. Yeah.
The more lucrative side of pop culture.
Lucrative, yes, but also lucrative in terms of like a lot of stories to tell and a lot of interesting stuff to cover. And there's news every single day. Yeah.
So your role at IGN has changed. So from editor-in-chief to executive producer. So now you have like responsibilities include business management. So what has been the biggest change then in that role, in your role within the company?
So our publisher for IGN Japan is Sankei Digital, which is a subsidiary of Sankei newspaper.
So actually my job now involves not only IGN Japan, but also a whole bunch of other stuff that Sankei does in the gaming space. So since we launched IGN Japan 10 years ago in 2016, Sankei Digital has kind of taken on more and more game-related services and that kind of thing. So now we also have a game publishing label called Hyperreal. We also do a consultancy and stuff like that, helping companies to build booths at events and these kinds of things. And so my job now is essentially business development across all those different things.
Right.
And so the IGN part is sort of an extension of what I was doing before as the chief editor. But before I was running the team, I was deciding our editorial strategy. I was working with advertisers and publishers and partners and whatever in Japan and globally. So I still do that sort of last part where it's a lot of work, it's partnership work basically. It's working with game companies, especially overseas, but also within Japan, to help our teams get the best possible access they can get, to help our advertising team to find clients. We also have a store, IGN Japan store, so helping kind of launching that and producing that. And then the other things that we do within Sankei, all the gaming stuff, it's basically, essentially, I'm just finding partnerships and sort of greasing the wheels to go around. Yeah.
So in the past, you've talked about the importance of video shows and live streaming for games media. So when you're telling the stories of games, how do you change your approach, like compared, you know, from traditional journalism to, you know, a video format?
Yeah, so I came up obviously as a writer in print magazines because I'm old, and then onto the internet and whatever. But along the way, it was absolutely impossible to continue without video, right? Video became such a big part of what we do. When we launched IGN Japan, I had a little bit of experience in the past with video, but it's like, you know, IGN is very much exists in both worlds, right? It's the written world and the video world. And it enables you to show a very different kind of side of what we do, because first of all, games are inherently suited to video because they're things that move, right? It's very interactive. yes, but it's also, you know, all the best of sort of the visual arts and the music and the sound effects, and everything comes together. So first and foremost, just simply showing a gameplay video. When I grew up, if I wanted to know what a game looked like in a magazine, or if I was writing about games, we were talking about a screenshot from a game, right? But this is much more immersive way to show somebody what the game is like.
Yeah.
Just first of all, that's the absolute sort of basic building block. On top of that, from a sort of journalistic perspective, you have the benefit of being able to speak freely about how you feel about the game, and maybe having multiple people come together. You know, when you have a game review, one person plays the game, reviews the game, writes the review.
Right.
Whereas you might be doing like a, you know, an impressions video where multiple people played it and we're all talking together about our impressions. Either we're all from the same team, or maybe from multiple different media, you know, all talking together, that kind of thing. It gives it a much more sort of a three-dimensional image of, you know, what it was that you felt and experienced when you played the game, and whether you think people will enjoy it or not, right? It gives you the opportunity with things like live streams to actually directly involve the audience and have a two-way conversation where you're pulling questions from the chat and responding to them in real time. That's really fun to do because you don't know what's going to come up, and so it's unscripted, and so that gives you an opportunity to kind of you know, really be playful and kind of do sort of catch ball with your
bit more
audience.
dynamics.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, and there's a whole bunch of different things. I mean, for example, when we go to an event like Tokyo Game Show, we're live streaming around 20 hours or more, completely live content over the course of a few days, having different game developers come to our studio that we build in. We build a studio inside the game Tokyo Game Show venue, and some other events. And then we have the developers bring their game to us, and we play together on air while interviewing them about the game.
Wow.
Which is such a kind of a lovely way to you know, have kind of an instant conversation about it. So it's not just one way.
Are there any difficult kind of things about that? Like, you know, given that it's not, you know, scripted, like, so, you know,
oh yeah.
What are some of the difficult aspects of that?
I mean, first of all, so if you're making like an edited video, right, you shoot all the stuff you need, and then the post-production is tough, right? It's time consuming. Whereas with live work, there's no post-production really at all. But it's pre-production. So you basically have to go in, you have to have everything ready in advance. For an event like TGS, where we're doing literally 20 hours of live stream coverage, we have to program who's coming when, who we're inviting, who says yes or no, what's their schedule, what's our schedule, where can we fit them in. The actual sort of scheduling is quite a big job. And then on the day, do people turn up on time? If they don't, it's live. We can't, there's nothing, you have to find ways to kind of creatively work around it so that the audience doesn't notice, or that the audience, maybe they do notice, but they don't mind. You might throw somebody a question that they weren't expecting or don't know how to answer, and you want to help them through it. We also do a lot of live translation, on-the-fly translation. If we have a game developer coming in, we broadcast in Japanese. If we have a game developer coming in who speaks English, then we can do it directly translation. If they come in and they speak Chinese or Korean, then we have to think about, okay, so now we need a translator to come in, because we can't necessarily handle every language. And so there's so many little pieces to it. And it's exhausting, of course. So you have a long day, you're in a noisy venue, you have to speak loudly. You have other guests, you want to be able to hear what they're saying, them hear you. You have to, you know, we have monitors and stuff like that. But it's not always perfect, especially, you know, in a very noisy venue. And so there's a lot of those kinds of challenges as well. Did somebody catch a cold? Did somebody go to karaoke last night and lose their voice? You know, there's so many kind of things to think about.
So given Japan's sort of gaming media environment, I can't imagine it was all that easy to establish a culture of reviews and criticism. So like, are there any concrete differences between like how reviews are received in, say, like North America versus Japan?
I think it's changed over the 10 years that we've been doing IGN Japan, because when we first launched, I mean, most Japanese game media do not really do a long form review with a score at the end. It's just not a thing that really ever kind of happened here. There's sort of variations on it, but that's specifically what IGN does. Didn't really exist so much when we started here domestically. And so there was a little bit of training obviously the game companies, please give us your games in advance and let us say what we think about them. And it may be negative and it may be positive. That side, obviously, but training the audience as well. You know, at first, when we first launched, there were a couple of games that we started by sort of translating a lot of reviews from the US IGN site into Japanese. And some of them were quite critical about certain games from certain Japanese game companies that most Japanese game media maybe wouldn't be quite so critical about, or if they were, they'd phrase it differently. I don't know. But certainly it sort of rubbed the audience up the wrong way at first.
Right.
And it took a while to kind of settle in and bed in. And it's for people to, you build up a sort of a trust relationship where we're not just coming out and saying, this game's rubbish, don't buy it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's coming in, it's more nuanced conversation about this is the good points, these are the bad points, and being able to give like a reasoned argument about why you think it's good or bad, or which parts you think are good or bad out of the whole. And over time, people came to kind of fall in with that maybe a little bit. Yeah.
So when you're speaking to international audiences, how do you like translate Japanese game culture for them? And then conversely, like how do you present global trends to Japanese audiences?
So, I mean, I think at the sort of base level, you have a really huge advantage, which is that games are really cool and they transfer, people all around the world are playing games from all different cultures around the world. And it's becoming more and more and more mixed, actually, as the hurdles to making games have come down and anyone can put their game on Steam. You're starting to see games coming up from Southeast Asia and India and Africa and all these different places that people didn't previously have a voice. So that side of it kind of makes the job much easier anyway, because people are just playing games, and they're just, if the game's fun, they don't care where it came from. They're interested maybe in learning a new perspective as well. So that's part that sort of makes the job very much easier. But in terms of, I mean, there's always a sort of, I don't know, managing expectations of what people expect to see from a game, or what people expect to see from a game developer, or how you introduce those things. What people expect to see or hear might be quite different in each different culture. And so there's that side of it, and sort of being careful to respectfully showcase something in a way into a different culture that maybe has a slightly different approach or way of thinking about it. There's definitely an element of that. Yeah, I would say more so in music as well.
Okay. But something you touched on a second ago, areas now like looking at Asia more widely, like areas like India, Southeast Asia are becoming more important, like in the gaming industry. So what is it you think Japanese companies have to do in order to succeed?
I mean, currently, right now, games from Japan are have had a massive resurgence. They were kind of part of the originator of the whole, culture of games back in, in the 80s and 90s. And then there was a period in the sort of early 2000s, mid 2000s, where Japanese games were not selling particularly well overseas, and they've overcome all those various sort of technical obstacles that they had. And now most of the sort of dominating games globally in terms of sales, in terms of popularity, in terms of critical respect, tend to come from Japan. The Nintendo Switch is dominating everywhere, and Mario Kart everybody loves, and Elden Ring as well. And so that's like quite a big advantage that Japan has already. But there are certain elements where Japan is at risk of falling behind, and especially when you look at somewhere like China, where the team sizes, or India, where they're able to form enormous teams of developers to make games of incredible quality. I mean, games that have come out of China 10, 15 years ago, no one thought anything about any games that would come from China in the West. Whereas now, really, games like Genshin Impact and Black Myth Wukong and many games coming out of China are like really showing everybody up, because the games are so well made.
Right.
And the reason they're so well made, is because the developers in China are hungry and they want to do it, and they have a lot of technical experience because they came up on as outsourced companies.
Right.
And then a younger generation coming in, they have ideas for IP. And then because of the cost of living is much lower than somewhere like Japan, they have the advantage of being able to have teams of like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of developers working on a single game. And so the iteration speed is very fast, and they're able to just blast stuff out very quickly that's of a high quality. They also were very quick to adopt things like multi-platform releases. You put your game on mobile, and you put it on PC, and you put it on console to meet the audience where they are. So that people in Asia more likely to play it on mobile, people in the West more likely to play it on PC or console, and so you're just getting it in everybody's hands, which has been a hugely successful thing. So I think developers in Japan, publishers in Japan, it can be a little bit slow to kind of follow trends like that a little bit, and for better or for worse, it's very risk averse. It's in the long run, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's definitely a danger of falling behind it in those regards.
you mentioned the resurgence or the renaissance that Japanese gaming is kind of experiencing at the moment. What do you think are the main reasons or reason for that?
I think Japanese games inherently are really good. And
Okay.
there was a period where in the way that games are made, kind of changed a lot over time, and the sort of reliance in the West on instead of making your own bespoke sort of engines and tools to make games, relying on third-party sort of solutions and using these third-party engines like Unreal and Unity and that kind of thing, which Japan was a little slow to adopt because they have a general sort of an artisanal attitude towards the way they make games and the way they make a lot of creative things. And so it took a little while to sort of catch up after that. But once a lot of Japanese companies started to catch up, the inherent quality that they had and the sort of the imaginative, creative kind of solutions and world building and that kind of stuff, which Japan's always really excelled at, was already there. It was still there. So and I think a lot of Japanese companies, I mean, Nintendo, Capcom, Sega, we've really seen their sort of fortunes, they've really sort of come back very hard. Like, and again, they were kind of able to catch up in the areas where they needed to catch up, and they already had the secret sauce there. Yeah. But also, I mean, in the West right now, we're seeing a lot of game companies closing down, or there's restructuring. There's a lot of financial hardship in the game industry in the West that hasn't really hit so much in Asia, because people here are a bit more risk averse, because in the West, especially around the pandemic, games are selling really well during the pandemic. Let's staff up, let's do more acquisitions, let's blah, blah, blah. And then the pandemic ends, people go back outside again and stop buying quite as many games. And it had this sort of domino effect. Whereas here, I think people were a bit more isolated from the, like I said before, risk aversion can be good as well.
Okay. I actually wanted to ask you about that, the restructuring that we're seeing now in the gaming industry, and then but also gaming media as well. Everything from job insecurity to AI to the relationship between PR and the press. So what do you think the next generation of gaming media has to rebuild?
We've seen a lot of gaming media disappear as well over the past few years, especially again in the West. It's a combination of many, many things, but if games aren't selling quite as well and few people are reading about them, that's one thing. We rely a lot on things like, you search for a game because you want to read about it, and then you click on something. And most people are using a search engine such as Google. And so every time someone like Google changes their algorithm, or they introduce or remove a service, it changes the way that people come to our sites. And so we have to adapt to that, and SEO and all that stuff, right? And it's harder, especially for a lot of smaller sites or mid-sized sites, to adapt to that quickly. And so a lot of places just disappear. And that's been really quite a rough thing to go through. Then you have things like AI, where you might search for something and a little précis comes up at the top. You don't even need to click on anything anymore. The précis may be correct, or it may not be correct. My question was answered, so whatever. And so you don't click, and so that's having even a stronger impact. And so, this technology is not going to go away. And when I worked in print and the internet came along, it was like, oh no, what do we do? And then then you're used to the internet, and suddenly video comes along, or streaming comes along, or influencers come along, or TikTok comes along. What are we going to do? Well, you adapt and you find new ways to work with those tools, right? And so I'm sure AI will be the same. But certainly, that side of things is definitely, I mean, AI is going to impact many, many industries around the world. I feel like something like media that's very much based, especially on text, is really like in trouble, because it's so easy for AI to give you something that satisfies your question. But, and then in terms of like the game industry itself, I mean, again, you'll see companies adapting to using these tools in creative ways, I hope. There's a lot of sort of emphasis on, oh, well, anybody can just put in a prompt to make a game now. Well, it's not actually true. The tools aren't there. They might be in 5 or 10 years. But do you want to play a game that was made that way? I mean, not necessarily. And if anybody can make a game, then what you'll see is that then the market is flooded with games, and you'll still need the curation to tell you which ones are good, which ones are bad. So I think in that regard, you'll still see good and bad games, no matter how they're made. You'll still see things that sort of have a spark of creative imagination about them. And if those AI tools are able to empower some kid who doesn't know how to make games, but now they have the tools in their hand, that could be a really good thing. If the market's flooded with absolute rubbish, then it would be a really bad thing. And we'll just have to kind of see how it pans out. Yeah, but I definitely feel like, yeah, it's up to media and your favorite influencer, whoever it is, to sort of curate things. So I think that need is never going to go away.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to finish off, and on that point actually, what sort of future would you like to see for the Japanese gaming industry within, say, like the next 5 years? And what role would you like to play in that?
I feel like the next 5 years, especially with this, the way AI is coming in and disrupting things, is going to be quite an important kind of battleground in a lot of ways. I feel like, again, Japanese companies tend to be not so quick to jump on a bandwagon, to follow a trend, for good or bad, and that hopefully means that they'll look at AI tools in a sober way, and bring it into their work in a way that's good, and sort of preserve the creativity that's at the very heart of the way games run here. So what I would hope is that in the next 5 years, maybe what you'll see is that companies are able to increase their sort of iteration speed and put out games of high quality more quickly by using these tools creatively without like damaging the kind of core, what makes them really cool, right? And so hopefully what you'll see in the next 5 years is just more really good high quality games coming out of Japan. We also kind of see, Japan kind of, again with games, but also with music, but also with movies, you see fluctuations, or kind of a pendulum between the interest the general population has in creative things that were made outside Japan versus domestically.
Right.
And I feel like right now the pendulum is swung more towards, we're interested in domestic stuff mainly, thank you. And it's nice to have, it's nice to see different cultural perspectives reflected in the games people are playing. You do definitely see if we look at the game charts in Japan, you do see games that are made outside Japan. You do see games that are made globally in the charts, especially on mobile and stuff like that. But again, the dominant platform here is the Nintendo Switch. It's the Japanese platform. The charts are mostly dominated by domestic games.
Right.
And so it would be nice to see that mix up a little bit more over the next few years, I think. As for my part in it, I don't know. I think I'm really lucky to work in an industry where I'm surrounded by creative people all the time. And part of my job is meeting with lots and lots and lots of creative people, and finding ways to kind of connect the dots between people, which I really, really enjoy. And, I travel a lot. I go to game events all around the world. I meet people in all different kinds of cultures, and I play games that they've made. And being able to help them to find an audience is a really rewarding part of my job. So yeah, I hope to be able to keep doing that. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for taking the time.
Sure. Thank you.
This has been 20 Minutes with Daniel Robson. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.